The village of Marrow Hollow sat at the edge of Veyrath, far from the polished stone towers of the capital, where the Alpha King ruled with a firm hand and a heavy heart. It was here, among the herb gardens and the smell of boiling roots, that Wren Ashcombe spent her days healing the sick and stitching up soldiers who wandered too close to the border wars. Wren had never seen the king up close. She had heard stories, of course. Everyone had. Cael Draven was said to be strong beyond measure, cold to his court, and utterly alone since the death of his parents. The kingdom whispered that he refused to marry, that he ignored the ancient blood law which demanded a queen to complete his rule. Some said he was cursed, others said he simply didn't care. Wren didn't care either, not about kings and crowns. She cared about the fever spreading through the eastern villages, the one that had already claimed 12 lives in Marrow Hollow alone. She worked from sunrise until her hands shook, grinding herbs, boiling water, pressing damp cloths to burning foreheads. It was on the 7th day of the outbreak that the king's soldiers arrived, half of them already sick, collapsing from their horses before they reached the village gates. And it was on that same day that Cael Draven himself rode in, uninvited, unannounced, his dark eyes scanning the chaos with an intensity that made even the bravest villagers step back. Wren did not step back. She had a dying soldier in her arms and no time for kings. "Move," she said, not even looking up. "Or make yourself useful." The words hung in the air like a held breath. No one spoke to the Alpha King that way. His guards stiffened, hands moving toward their weapons, but Cael only stared at her for a long moment before he knelt beside her, without a word, and did exactly as she asked. He held the soldier steady while she worked, his large hands surprisingly gentle, his focus unwavering. By nightfall, the soldier lived. So did 11 others Wren had treated that day. Cael watched her work until the moon rose high, and something in him, something that had been quiet and closed for years, stirred awake. He returned the next morning, and the morning after that. "You don't have to keep coming," Wren told him on the 3rd day, wiping sweat from her brow as she stirred a fresh batch of medicine. "I have work to do. I don't need an audience." "I'm not here to watch," Cael said. "I'm here because my men needed help, and you're the reason they're still breathing. Your men needed a healer, not a king standing in the doorway looking important." A ghost of a smile touched his mouth, so brief she almost missed it. "Is that what I look like? Important?" "You look like someone unused to being told no," she said, and went back to her work. He came anyway, day after day, until the fever passed and the village began to heal. And somewhere in those long days of boiling herbs and quiet conversations, Wren found herself looking forward to the sound of his horse arriving at dawn. She told herself it meant nothing. He was a king. She was a village healer with no family, no name of note, nothing but her hands and her stubbornness. Kings did not fall for women like her. But Cael Draven had never followed the rules others expected of him, and he did not intend to start now. On the last day before he was due to return to the capital, he found her alone by the river, washing bandages in the cold water. He sat beside her without asking, which she had learned was simply how he did things. "The council wants me to choose a queen," he said, watching the water instead of her. "They've wanted it for 3 years. They say the kingdom cannot hold together without one. That the blood law demands it." Wren kept her hands moving. "So choose one. I'm sure there's no shortage of women who would jump at the chance." "I don't want one of them." Something in his voice made her still. She turned to look at him, and for the first time she saw not a king, but a man, tired and lonely, in a way that had nothing to do with crowns. "I want you," he said simply. "I'm not asking because the council demands it. I'm asking because I haven't stopped thinking about you since the day you told me to make myself useful." Wren's heart pounded, but she shook her head, because it was the only sensible thing to do. "I don't know anything about ruling a kingdom. I don't want a crown, Cael. I want my garden, my patience, my quiet life. I would only bring you trouble." "You already have," he said, and this time his smile was real. "I don't mind." Still, she refused. Gently, but firmly, she refused, because a healer from Marrow Hollow becoming the Alpha King's queen sounded like the beginning of a story that ended badly, and Wren had learned long ago not to trust stories that sounded too good. Kale did not push. He only nodded, though something in his eyes told her the matter was far from settled, and he rode back to the capital with her refusal sitting heavy in his chest. But he could not stay away. He returned within the month, then again a few weeks after that, always with some excuse, supplies for the village, questions about the fever, reports that needed a healer's opinion. Ren stopped pretending she didn't wait for him. Slowly, cautiously, something grew between them, built not on crowns or blood law, but on quiet evenings by the river, and the easy way he made her laugh when she least expected it. It was during one of these visits that Kale noticed the locket she wore, a small, tarnished piece of silver tucked beneath her collar, one she never removed. "Where did you get that?" he asked, his voice suddenly sharp with an urgency she didn't understand. Ren touched it instinctively. "I don't know. I've had it since I was small. The woman who raised me said it was around my neck when she found me, abandoned outside the village, no more than a few months old. She never knew where I came from." Kale's jaw tightened. He reached for her hand, gently pulling the locket free so he could look closer, and Ren watched his face drain of color as he traced the faint, worn crest etched into the metal. "This is the royal crest," he said quietly. "The old one, from before the coup." Ren frowned. "What coup?" 20 years ago, before I was born, the royal bloodline of Veyrath was slaughtered in a single night, a rebellion within the court, led by a family hungry for power. They said no one survived, not even the infant princess. My family took the throne afterward, not through blood, but through strength, because the kingdom needed order, and there was no one left to rule." Ren's hands had gone cold. "You think this locket belonged to that family?" "I think," Kale said slowly, "that you might be the infant princess everyone believed was dead." The words settled over her like a weight she couldn't lift. She wanted to laugh, to tell him it was impossible, but something in his certainty, and something in the way her own chest had gone tight and strange, told her he might be right. Kale returned to the capital that same week, and brought his most trusted advisor, an old woman named Marla, who had served the royal family for decades, out to Marrow Hollow to see the locket for herself. Marla's hands trembled as she examined it, and when she looked up at Ren, her eyes were wet. "You have your mother's eyes," Marla whispered. "I held you the night you were born. I was the one who carried you out of the palace when the fires started, and I placed you outside a village far from the capital, praying someone kind would find you before the rebels did. I never stopped wondering if you survived." Ren sat frozen, the truth crashing over her in waves. She was not simply a healer with no family. She was the last living heir to the throne of Veyrath, the rightful bloodline the ancient law spoke of, the one piece missing from the kingdom for 20 years. She should have felt joy, or pride, or something grand befitting such a discovery. Instead, she only felt afraid. "I don't want this," she told Kale that night, pacing before the fire in her small cottage. "I never wanted a crown. I still don't. Nothing has changed, just because of a piece of silver around my neck." "Everything has changed," Kale said gently. "Not because of what you want, but because of what you are. The blood law doesn't care about wishes, Ren. It cares about bloodlines. You are the missing heir. That truth exists whether you accept it or not." "And if I refuse the throne? If I choose to stay here, grinding herbs and stitching wounds, and never set foot in your palace?" Kale was quiet for a long moment. "Then I would still love you. I would still want you, crown or no crown. But others may not let you disappear so easily. The rebels who slaughtered your family 20 years ago were never fully caught. Some scattered into hiding. If word spreads that the lost heir still lives, they will come looking, and they will not come with kindness." His warning proved true faster than either of them expected. Within days, strangers began appearing near Marrow Hollow, asking careful questions about the healer with no family history, about the locket she wore. Kale doubled the guard around the village, but Ren could feel the danger closing in like a storm on the horizon. The attack came on a moonless night. Men she had never seen before, faces hidden, blades drawn, stormed the edge of the village, searching for her by name, the old name, the royal name she had never known was hers. Kale's warriors met them at the tree line, but it was Ren herself, cornered near her cottage, who faced the final attacker alone, a man twice her size, who clearly believed a village healer would be easy prey. He had underestimated her. Years of quick hands and quicker thinking, honed by countless emergencies in the healing tent, meant Ren was neither weak nor slow. She fought him off long enough for Kale to arrive, and together they ended the threat before dawn broke over the hollow. Standing amid the wreckage of the attack, breathless and shaking, Ren finally understood what Kale had been trying to tell her. She could not simply refuse the truth of who she was and expect the world to leave her be. The crown was not a choice she could dodge forever. It was a responsibility that had found her whether she wanted it or not. But there was a difference, she realized, between being forced onto a throne and choosing to claim it. Weeks later, Ren stood before the full royal council in the capital, dressed simply, her chin high, the locket resting openly against her collar, for the first time in her life. She did not ask for the crown. She did not beg for acceptance. She simply told them the truth of who she was, of where she came from, and of what she intended to do with the position that had been thrust upon her. "I did not ask to be born into this bloodline," she told the council, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "I did not ask for a crown, and for a long time, I refused it outright. But I have seen what this kingdom needs, not from a throne, but from the ground, among the people who suffer when their leaders forget them. I will not rule because the law demands it. I will rule because I choose to, and because I believe I can do right by the people who raised me, without ever knowing my true name." The council, moved by her honesty and impressed by the strength Kale had spoken of for months, accepted her claim. And when the coronation bond was finally formed between Ren and Kale, it was not born from obligation or ancient law. It grew from something far stronger, a choice made freely by two people who had found each other first as equals, long before either of them understood what she truly was. Ren became queen, not because she was forced to accept a crown she had once refused, but because she finally understood that ruling and loving could be the same act of courage. Standing beside Kale as the kingdom of Veyrath welcomed its lost heir home, she realized the girl who once told a king to make himself useful had never really disappeared. She had simply grown into the queen the kingdom always needed, on her own terms, at last.